Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday Minisode.
Yeah, Monday Minis are where we get an opportunity to kind of talk about one specific thing for a short amount of time, typically 10 minutes or so, as opposed to our longer form podcasts, which run over an hour, and those drop every Wednesday. You can get them on YouTube, you can get them on iTunes, on Spotify, on podcasts, whatever, anywhere, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcast needs met. Check out our long form podcast where we talk about all kinds of stuff. But today we're going to be talking about when it's a good idea to walk away from a deal. And this is not going to be, necessarily an easy thing to think about, because a lot of times the deal is what you're after, right? It's like, do you really want to walk away from a deal? But sometimes there's reasons to walk away, to say no. And so today we're going to be talking about when you should walk away from a deal to make sure that you're not losing money on your reselling business.
Yeah, you're right about it. This is a tough one, because when I was thinking through this one, I thought, okay, hopefully what we say makes sense. But I do know this. How many times have I gone and bought something and I shouldn't have? How many times did I make a deal and I shouldn't have, and I regret it, and I ended up losing a lot of money? And I want to make sure that people aren't losing that money, especially if you're new. You want to make sure that you're not losing that money. So the first item here out the gate is, I'm a big believer that to go with your gut. Like if now after you look up comps and you do the research, but if it's out of your comfort zone, if you don't feel comfortable with the deal, don't make the deal. Now, there's a difference between you don't feel comfortable because it's risky and you don't feel comfortable because you know there's something wrong with it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in this major deal. I remember one time somebody was trying to sell me something for like $5,000, and and I'll talk about this later, but I just didn't feel comfortable the entire time from A to B. I showed up as a favor to a friend. I looked at the stuff as a favor to a friend. And the entire time I'm like, no, like this isn't what I'm supposed to be selling. Like I don't know anything here. I don't feel comfortable with the person selling it. The numbers sound great, but I'd rather have somebody else deal with it. And so I walked away. So let us know in the comments. Does this make sense to you? Because I'm a big, I can't tell you, the older I get, how many times do I go, I should have gone with my gut. I should have made that deal, or I should have walked away from that deal. And a lot of the times I've been right when I've, thought back on those moments.
Yeah. And this one's tough because, again, there are times when you're out of your comfort zone and you make the deal anyways because it's profitable enough, or you know enough about something. Like, for instance, what you did with the Hot Wheels, right? You didn't know a lot about Hot Wheels, but you kind of had an idea you'd be profitable on it. So there are times where you're a little bit out of your comfort zone, but it's still okay because it's an opportunity. And then there's definitely times you're like, hey, I think, like, there was a military surplus deal that I found, and I kind of tried to work out, and then I tried to give it to you because I wasn't comfortable with it, and then you weren't comfortable with it either, because we just didn't know a lot of the stuff that was there, right? So it was like, yeah, somebody who, there might be profit here, but I just don't know. And that kind of goes on to the next item, which is sometimes it takes too long for the purchase, for the deal to actually be profitable. Now, you might know, hey, there's a lot of money in this, but it's going to take me, maybe it's a long tail item. Maybe this thing is going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to sell, and I've got a lot of money tied up in it. Or maybe it's going to take a lot of time in order to actually get the items listed and done. Like, maybe if you walked in and you found a deal where it's like, hey, here's a whole storage unit full of DVD VCR combo, some DVD recorders. You're like, well, there's some money in here. But then you realize, okay, even if I can get all these for like $1 a piece, I'm going to end up having to test them all. I'm going to have to end up like figuring out which ones are working and worthwhile and which ones are going to be parts. And then the shipping on those take longer, and some are quick sales and some aren't. And then some of them I do got to get rid of. And sometimes you could just throw some of that stuff away, but like there's also electronic recycling, because you can't throw everything. Like, is it going to be too much work? Is it going to take way too long in order to actually get those items listed? If you know they're just going to sit in a death pile, or if it's just like a really long tail item, it might not be worth it. So that's one of those things where you got to say, hey, is this a quick flip? Am I going to be able to list it, ship it, and be done with this deal in a short amount of time? Or is this something that's I'm going to be dealing with for a long time coming in order before I actually actualize those profits?
Yeah, you don't want to inherit someone's mess. You just don't want to. And I'll give you an example. Lately, if you've been listening to our podcast, you check out our podcast. The last few major hauls I've had, I've made my money back within 24 hours, which is kind of wild. It's kind of crazy. I'm not that good. Okay. It happened that way. But it was a lesson to me that whenever I make these major hauls, I think my rule has always been within 7 days, I better make my money back or else it's going to be a bad buy. Because like, for example, actually today I had an offer. It was a whole bunch of luxury brand kind of clothing. It was Louis Vuitton, it was Gucci, all these different brands. And the person, I think they were looking for like $3,000 for everything. And I said, well, $1,000 is kind of where I'm at, but I'm not even at $1,000. Like that was uncomfortable. And why did I say that? Because making back that $1,000 that I spent, in my mind, after doing research and from what I know, would have probably taken me 6 months to make. And that's a long time to wait to be profitable. So my comfortable place probably would have been like 300 to 500 because I could maybe pull that off in 7 days by having some quick sales. And again, it's eBay. When you sell on eBay, you run the danger of picking up a long tail item, and you do not want to do that. Now, this next one is the one that Mike and I experience this a lot on social media. Is when the seller is being forceful. I can't tell you how many times I get a DM. Orlando, this is so profitable. I can't believe you're missing out on this. Like I have these, I've been selling these for like years. Like I want to cut you a piece. I get this all the time. Mike gets this all the time. And I always say no, because to me, if something is so profitable, why are you sharing it with me? And I understand people can be kind, but I'm also a big believer that most of us, when we make decisions, we're in it for ourselves. That's just how we function as humans. And so when somebody is being forceful, I can't tell you how many times I've had a haul and, somebody would be like, oh, I'm giving it to you for a deal, $1,000. You're going to be able to 10X this. And they probably were right. But it probably, like we said earlier, it's going to take me 3 years to 10X that. So do I really want to spend that $1,000? And like, come on, you're missing out. You don't want to miss out. What I like is when the people are like, you know what? I don't know about this, but just take it. Or, these items are valuable, but it's up to you if you want to take them. Like when I get those conversations, I feel more comfortable because they're not trying to force it on me. I find that most of the time, especially right now, you need to be careful. You need to be careful on whatnot. You need to be careful with YouTube influencers and so on. When they're trying to sell their inventory, a lot of the time, they're just trying to sell something that they couldn't sell themselves, but they know that resellers will get wide-eyed and go, you know what, I can make some good money on that. That's such a good deal. When in actuality, you should be walking away from that deal. Do you want to add to that a little bit? I feel like I took over.
No, I think that's good. I've had that happen multiple times, or I've had a couple of people I've worked with where you could tell it wasn't right. It was something was off. Sometimes people are trying to, like you said, get rid of their mistakes or their errors, or there's something else going on. And it's tough because, yeah, you do want to be profitable. Sometimes people are trying to help you out. But like you said, if something is that good, like if someone's like, hey, I'm going to show you the secret where you can, turn this amount of money, you could turn $10 into $1,000. It's so easy. Anybody can do it. It's just going to cost you $50. And I'm thinking like, hey, if this person knows how to turn $10 into $1,000 and you can repeat it over and over and it's so easy, why do you want my $50? Right? Like there's clearly my $50 to you is worth something because you're trying really hard to get my 50 when you can clearly get thousands so easy. That's what you're trying to tell me. A lot of times if it's too good to be true or someone's pushing that hard, that shows there's something else potentially going on. Not necessarily always, but it's a good red flag that maybe something else going on. So another one that you kind of got to be careful of is if you have a hard time being able to verify the authenticity of the items you're trying to buy. I can't tell you how many times I've been at garage sales and there's like a wall of Nike shoes or something. and they're like, yeah, these are, and they're new in box, they've got tags on them, and you're like, are these real? I'm not really a shoe head. I mean, if somebody like a sneakerhead, there's some people who could probably, they can like look at it and be like, oh, this actually has 2 stitches here in the back, and if it's authentic, it's got 3, and they know how to do all of that. I don't, right? There's certain things I feel comfortable with being able to kind of check authenticity, but a lot of times, you know, you kind of can't. And so there's certain things where it's like, if somebody is selling, if you're at an estate sale and there's nice stuff and there's like one, you know, Louis Vuitton bag or one Coach bag or one, you know, Dooney or something like that, where it's like, okay, like there's some money here potentially. Yeah, that might be worth taking the risk on because everything seems legit. But if there's like just a random thing out somewhere at a thrift store or a garage sale, and it's just one item and you can't really verify with other items around, or worse than that is like, again, if there's like, yeah, I've got 40 Coach bags. Do you want to buy a Coach bag? And I'm like, unless I'm an expert in verifying the authenticity of this, I'm not going to do it. So when you're dealing with high-end items, you're dealing with things that are easily forged or easily, you know, there's replicas made of things like shoes, things like, you know, bags, those type of stuff. Unless you really, really, really know the niche, stay away from it because yeah, it doesn't hurt to pick up a $2 Supreme shirt at a garage sale and be like, hey, maybe. And then you do a little bit of research. But yeah, if you're going to be dropping a lot of money on some Supreme stuff, you really need to know whether or not it's real. So if you struggle with the authenticity and you can't verify it for sure, I would walk away unless you can get it at a cheap enough price that you're okay with like basically throwing the stuff away. Like, oh, this is all fake. I have no way of offloading it. If it's that cheap, sure, why not? Pick up the bag for $1 if you can do a little bit of research. You're taking a $1 gamble, right? Like maybe there's a 1 in 1,000 chance it's legit. You do the research. If it's legit, cool. But if you're paying a couple $100s for the bag, hoping that you can get 1,000 for it, and you can't verify, I'd walk away from that deal.
Yeah, it gets scary. I can't. Oh, that was part of the deal too. I had somebody else offer me a Gucci bag and all the other things, but there was no provenance. There was no paperwork. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go down this road. So I walked away. All right. So the last one here is when you're too emotionally invested. And I don't know, Mike might disagree, but I've had times where, you know, it's something that's in my niche, right? It's, you know, a ton of Hawaiian shirts that I know a lot about, or it's, you know, video games, or it's something I really like. Right. And not only do I like it because of profitability, but I like it because it's nostalgic, right? It's something I connect with. And what I found is I will end up paying a lot more for items that I am invested in instead of just dealing with it as a business venture. And so you got to really be careful because you may pay up for something or you may end up just paying for something. And next thing you know, you're not even reselling it. You're keeping it, or it's taking too long to sell because to you it was special. But the reality is when you did your research on Terapeak or on WorthPoint, it actually wasn't that valuable and it wouldn't sell that fast. And so you have to be careful. The vice versa is true too. When you're buying stuff from people and they're emotionally attached to something, sometimes it's best just to walk away because they're charging you the top dollar for that item because they really do not want to sell that item to you. And I would say Mike and I deal with that a lot. I've recently encountered a lot of, yeah, I kind of want this much for it. And it's like, yeah, I could try to negotiate, but it's probably not going to go anywhere. So it's best for me to just walk away.
That's right. Yeah, so I agree.
So hopefully all these helped you here when to walk away from a deal. I know it's kind of like Mike said, I think there's a little bit of awkwardness to it because everybody has their comfort level and their risk level. But this is kind of the way Mike and I approach things when it deals with making a deal. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Late.
Peace.